my name is Palma Accardi, and you are watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition and filmed live every Sunday night here at the world-famous Irish pub in Atlantic City.
I'm meteorologist Dan Skeldon. Thanks for being with us. A sensational weekend, and couldn't ask for nicer weather. The tropics are quiet, so we don't necessarily have any impending weather to talk about. But still, lots to discuss with a guest we welcome back for his second visit on Tidal Flooding Talk. Long time, let me see what we got here. Commentator, TV radio host, newsman, South Jersey resident, and hurricane aficionado,
Yes.
David Spatz.
Well, I don't know about aficionado.
Hi, David.
Hi, how you doing? Good to see you. Aficionado would be like somebody who can't wait for a hurricane to come.
Okay.
I wish they'd just stay away. And,
Okay.
and you watch from a distance, because when we have a hurricane, we have issues.
And if there's anyone in South Jersey who knows is an area of interest before me, it's this guy right here.
And
He
Jim
keeps a
Everwine.
vigilant on Jim Everwine.
And Jim
you're right.
Everwine.
He keeps a vigilant eye on the tropics. We're going to discuss that and just a whole lot more over the next 20 to 25 minutes. Feel free to post your questions, comments, just listen live. And of course, if for those of you who don't know David Spatz, and I don't think there's anyone in South Jersey who doesn't, but if there is that one or two vacationer visiting, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a native of Atlantic City. I was born in Atlantic City a whole bunch of years ago. And I've just had opportunities to go different places and do different things. But you know what? I love Atlantic City. I guess I'm third generation, and my kids and now my grandkid. We have 5 generations in Atlantic City, so I got the beach sand in my shoes, and I started in the media when I was 22 years old, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and it's 50 years later, and
You're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Yeah.
Now, did you always know that media was
No.
where you wanted to go?
I thought I was headed for a career in medicine.
Wow.
Either medicine
Big
or
difference.
pharmacy. Either medicine or pharmacy. My dad was a pharmacist. He owned a pharmacy in Wildwood. And I worked there when I was a kid, and I thought maybe, but Dad talked me out of it because this is back in the late 60s. He said, you gotta watch out, there's gonna be these big companies coming along, and they're gonna own lots of pharmacies, and they're gonna put the mom and pop stores out of business. He was talking about chains.
You
And,
may have been onto something there.
he was. So, and then I thought medicine. I had 4 cousins who were physicians, and I thought maybe try that. But then I ran into a course called qualitative analysis in college, and that was the end of medical school, dreams. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I got a job at the Press of Atlantic City. I always liked to write. I thought reporting looks like this. This is back when they required a journalism degree. It looks like it's easy enough. So I did it, and ended up covering entertainment, mostly, specializing in entertainment. But I have done well when it comes to I've covered sports, I've covered general news, hard news, breaking news,
Weather?
financial news, a little bit of weather here and there, and entertainment. I'm still doing it.
Now, I'm a little biased. I'm going to ask you,
Go
what's
ahead.
your most memorable weather event you have covered?
Well, I guess it would have to be Sandy. Although I still think Irene, for excitement level, I don't think Sandy approached the excitement level we had, because you remember being at the station and you started picking up a tornado that was in Longport and was headed right across the
Or
border.
a potential
Or
tornado.
potential
It
tornado.
didn't turn out to
It
be
didn't,
one,
right.
but it was potential.
Right,
Yeah.
and you thought, and it was headed toward Linwood, and we were like, what do we do? Well, and as I recall, we were in the Cool 98.3 studio, which is surrounded by glass.
Yes.
And I was thinking, oh
Not a
boy,
good place to
not
be.
A good,
Yeah.
Not a good place to be, but that's the only place we could get on the air from.
And I think you're right in that Irene, the evacuation zone was much, much bigger than Sandy. As it turns out, much bigger than it needed to be, because
Right,
we
yeah.
got locked out with Irene. And it was also our first threat, of a hurricane in quite some time.
Yeah.
We love when they don't turn out to be as bad as we thought, but then again, sometimes that lays the foundation for trouble with the next one, and it kind of did that with Sandy.
Exactly. I mean, Atlantic City, in and of itself, and actually Absecon Island made out pretty well with Sandy, unless you ask Al Roker, because then he tells you.
Right. We made out well
comparatively
yes.
speaking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you go a little bit further north. You know, there was the famous roller coaster that got washed into the ocean, and everybody thought it was Atlantic City. That's what annoys me sometimes about my brethren in the media. They see the word New Jersey, they see a roller coaster and wash there, but they immediately assume, Atlantic City is the only city in New Jersey.
Right.
So that
Now,
annoys me.
what makes you so interested in hurricanes? You were talking about it earlier. Not that you want hurricanes, but you're interested in them.
Thing that got this guy. I
I don't know. He's been interested since.
Well,
I was 9 in 1985 with Gloria. You were a little older than 9 in Gloria in 85.
yeah, I was a little older, but
But it was an earlier storm for you.
With me, yeah, it was Hurricane Donna in 1960, which made landfall around Cape May, or near Cape May. And I rode that one out with my family and everything in Wildwood. And I don't know, it was all that power, all of that energy that the storm created, and then, having to deal with the aftermath of it. I remember the streets of Wildwood were so flooded. And my dad's pharmacy was, we had to get rid of everything. They got hit by salt water, which was just about everything in the store. And we had to get rid of all the bromo seltzer and the Alka-Seltzer. We had to get rid of it. So I remember, I was 9 years old, standing in the street, Pacific Avenue in Wildwood, dumping in bromo seltzer and Alka-Seltzer, and the street was boiling. Because you know how Alka-Seltzer works. Mm-hmm. When you drop 2 tablets in the water, imagine dropping a case.
And about what time of year was this?
September, I think.
Well, September. And actually, it wasn't officially a landfall. I had to check. It was just off the East Coast.
Right.
It was a landfall over the Outer Banks, and then it was just off of Cape May, but a bad storm. And then I remember my grandfather up in New England telling me stories about that. He was like delivering papers in the storm, and then he had to go home, and his dad strapped a rope around his waist, and he was nailing shingles to the roof as they were blowing off the roof. He was re-shingling the roof, and different times back then.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting how we were both 9 years old with different storms.
But ever since then, I've been fascinated by meteorology anyway. I told you, I'm a meteorologist's nightmare, because I took a year of meteorology in college as an elective. And I know just enough to be dangerous. That's all. But I took it because I'm a boater, and I was a boater back then, and I just wanted to have more of an understanding.
And a fisherman too.
And a fisherman, although not yet this summer. But I just wanted to have a better understanding of how weather would affect you out in the water. Because sometimes you're out in the water and you get a storm blow up, out of nowhere.
Yep.
Delaware Bay is famous for that. You've experienced that, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Yes. What was my next question? Oh, you, we alluded to this at the beginning. You are vigilant when it comes to tracking tropical threats. So, when they name a hurricane, here's Hurricane Tom coming up the East Coast, everyone knows about it, all right? But when something first starts brewing, thousands of miles away off Africa, and you always say on your radio show, there's a little yellow X.
Yeah.
And what that is the Hurricane Center says, all right, that's an area of concern. And then if it's a moderate area of concern, it's an orange X. And if it's a really big area of concern, it's a red X. And then it will become a tropical depression, tropical storm. So you start to follow it from its infancy.
Yeah, I do.
So that's what you meant by enough to be dangerous. That you took that one course.
That 1 year of meteorology. It taught me a little bit about different things.
How vigilant do you think people should be? Maybe not refreshing the Hurricane Center site waiting for X's, but also not waiting until we're under a hurricane warning. How vigilant should people along any hurricane-prone area be? Especially coming up on the peak of hurricane season. How much should you pay attention?
It all depends on the time of when in the season it is. Early in the season, I really don't think that they need to just be hitting the refresh button every minute. This time of year, if somebody asked me, I would say once a day when you go to check your email and you get up in the morning, just go to the National Hurricane Center website and see if they've got it. Because right now, it says no tropical activity is expected for the next 5 days.
And
So
that's the best picture to see, right?
Exactly.
And if we can get through the next 90 days, we'll be at the end of hurricane season.
But I was looking back. Last year we had no hurricanes in the month of August, but we sure made up for it in September, didn't we?
We did.
Wasn't there one time when there were 4 named storms? I believe in the Atlantic basin.
It's amazing how short but intense the peak of the season can be.
And that was, if I had to guess, I would say toward the end of September, beginning of October,
Yes.
maybe. Yeah.
Yep. August 15th to October 15th is the peak of hurricane season every year. And of course, we're talking about hurricanes because this time of year, that's your best chance of tidal flooding. You can get nuisance flooding in the summer, but our best chance for tidal flooding events or anything significant this time of year is hurricanes. We are coming up on the peak of the season. Now, we were talking off camera, live high up. You're a resident.
I'm on the 14th floor. I live in Atlantic City. I'm on the 14th floor of a rather large tower, and I don't have to worry about getting flooded out of my home. But you had said to me, I wanted to talk about what concerns I have about flooding, getting off the island. I mean, I'm not even worried about my car because I can park up in a garage, so that's not an issue. But it's getting down.
It's getting to and from your house.
Exactly. So what I do, because I do a radio show, and I'd like, even though we've undergone some changes, I still like to keep ahead of the news. And we have something like a hurricane or a tropical storm or some kind of a system like that brewing. What I will do is make sure that I can get off the island before I have to start worrying about is my car going to get flooded out or anything. I see too many people do that, and it's crazy. They throw a perfectly good car away.
They do.
Not to mention create wakes, which is also dangerous for other people.
Yeah.
But so you've actually broadcasted several storms, hurricanes included. When do you think is the most important time to be tuning in to learn about an upcoming hurricane event? A few days before?
I would say, if they start, posting, a tropical storm watch or hurricane watch, although you should know before then. If something's coming up the East Coast, it's probably hard not to know about it with all the different media at our disposal between social media and traditional and internet. If you don't know about it, it's because you don't want to know about it. I just think that everybody will know about it.
Today they should, right?
Yeah.
Because there was the storm in 1938 called the Long Island Express, and hundreds and hundreds of people died because they went to work in the morning, have no idea that a storm was coming. They moved 60 miles an hour up the coast, so there was sunshine, then clouds, then hurricane, and hundreds of people died. That won't happen today.
No.
Now, however, let's take Katrina, for instance. Hurricane Katrina, 3,000 people in New Orleans died. On Friday, before Katrina hit on a Monday morning, the Weather Service put out a statement, if you stay in New Orleans, you could die.
Right.
I mean, you really can't get more... it's not scare tactics, but more, serious of a warning
No,
than
I think it was scare tactics.
Right. Yet people stayed,
whatever
and people died.
Exactly.
So there shouldn't have been anyone in New Orleans. I mean, if, this major hurricane's coming, leave, you got 3 days warning, there should be plenty of time. Jersey Shore, let's say, if you're on your Longport media, News Talk 1400 WRND, and you say, from the Weather Service, if you stay along the South Jersey Shore this weekend, you could die, from Hurricane Tom, let's say, all right? How many people will take that warning seriously? And will the beaches still be busy one day before the the hurricane?
It's hard to say because there are people who maybe they were down here before and there was a storm coming or they got chased away, and then it didn't happen. I mean, that stuff can happen. I mean, especially with the tropical system, it doesn't take much for that storm to make a right-hand turn and go out to sea. Right. And everybody goes, they blew the forecast.
And we had that with Hermine on Labor Day weekend, I want to say in 2015 or 16.
It was, I think, 15 or 16,
Labor Day weekend was supposed to have a storm that was going to rival the flooding of Sandy or worse, and we had nothing.
They canceled 2 beach concerts It chased everybody away, and we never had a problem. Never had a problem. So that's why people are like a lot of people down here. They're I don't know. Yeah, they're skeptical. A lot of them are skeptical about meteorology and meteorologists, and they think that like the guys in Philly only care about keeping people in Philly, so they're not going to tell you to come to the shore. It's I don't know. It might drive me crazy.
I think we've improved since Sandy, but I know that there were challenges as to people that don't have it easy to evacuate. Where do some people go, or people with disabilities that can't just hop in a car and leave.
The county does a really good job of letting us know, letting the media know what type of evacuation system is in place, that people who are stranded, or by stranded, they don't have anybody to help them out. They can get help. I mean, no one should ever be stuck because there's enough time. There's enough warning. I think you would agree. There's
plenty of warning. But one thing we always stress is everyone thinks it's the wind of a hurricane that is the most damaging. And if you're in, Cuba or Florida, where the winds can get up to 160 miles an hour, it is.
Or a high-rise building.
You're right.
Yeah.
The higher up you go, absolutely.
Yeah,
The 14th floor is a little windier than the first floor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But as Sandy proved to us here, it's flooding. It's tidal flooding. It's storm surge that is the most destructive and the most deadly part of really any hurricane. And Sandy was technically not a hurricane at landfall. It was a Category 0. Technically, I think it was a 1.
Dan and I both agree that the term superstorm does not exist in meteorology.
It does.
It does.
Right.
You never took a test that had that on it.
And when we have you back in 20 years, I think Sandy will be reclassified as a hurricane. But regardless, it was a Category 0 with 75 mile an hour winds.
Right.
Yet it had the storm surge of a Category 4 hurricane because of the angle it hit, the tide it hit, and the flooding did all the damage. There was very little wind. The derecho winds were much, much worse. So what we stress in forecasting is it's water, not wind, that kills, sure. So don't pay attention to the category. Pay attention to the flooding. And I'm not saying that winds are not going to be a factor.
Well,
you have 75 mile an hour winds, they can do damage.
Exactly.
The derecho at 110.
Right. And the most costly
Absolutely.
damages.
I mean, I don't know what the percentage is of water damage along the South Jersey shore versus wind, but I guarantee you it's 70, 80, 90%, something along those lines, where it was water that did most of the damage. So, and that's something we always harp on too. We don't pay attention to the category, flooding, and hence the name of the show, tidal flooding talk. Most tidal flooding events aren't hurricane related, but hurricanes are one of the big ones.
The last hurricane we've only had 2 named storms this year, but Barry was one of those the types of storms where it was a tropical storm. It hit 75 miles an hour for like a minute and a half, became a hurricane, and then the moment it made landfall, it was a tropical storm again. So I'm almost a wasted name.
If people pay attention to that, what is it and how category is it, when they should just be paying attention to it's a hurricane. It doesn't matter what category, it's a hurricane.
What's the storm surge?
Right.
Where did Superstorm, that term, come from? Do we know?
Yeah, insurance. I think the media and the insurance companies got together.
And initially, about 5 days before it hit, it was a Frankenstorm. Because it hit her before Halloween, so it was Frankenstorm.
I like that a lot better.
But meteorologists decided that made light of a serious situation.
Yeah, because
people
liked
it,
I was
but
more happy about
people
it.
wouldn't take the storm seriously.
People did like it. I remember the phone calls we were getting on the air. Like, it's not a Frankenstorm. It's not going to be a Frankenstorm. It's like,
and people like naming storms, whether it be hurricanes or nor'easters. That's why we had Nemo and Jonas and. People like naming storms.
So is that why we started naming storms?
No, we didn't.
Well, Weather Channel started naming winter storms. We started naming hurricanes because they're easier to refer to, rather than the Great Atlantic Hurricane of September of 1944 or Tom.
Right.
It's easier to say Tom than all that other mouthful before.
Okay.
So we because it's more conversational, people remember it. And it's easier to say.
Like Dan said, it was the Weather Channel did it. I guess there was a marketing reason behind it because in the media, there's a marketing reason behind everything. I've been doing it long enough to know that it's a business. You have to make money. So someone came up with the idea of naming winter storms, but there are some stations, some local stations that don't do that, and some that do.
Yep. And I don't believe it. So I'll never name a winter storm Palma, or I don't know if the Weather Channel will either. They like to pick the weird names.
I don't,
yeah,
well, I have a weird name, so I might be up on the list.
It's weird, but it's definitely right on the rarer side, right? I want to say hi to some viewers. Paula, nice to have you on. Ethel and Justin Thomas, good evening to you. Candy Thompson Clark loves the great weekend weather. I know you're a big fan of it too.
Absolutely.
Who isn't, right? I mean,
well, this was your type of weekend for the summer.
Low humidity. It was my type
right.
of weekend. Water temperature was 74. Right. No rip current.
The air
low
temperature.
Rip currents. The air temperature was comfortable.
Yep.
The nights were cool. Yeah, it's my type of weekend. Absolutely. Don Mason, nice to have you on. Dan and Dave, missing NBC 40 days. Roger Cope, Dan, are you drinking a beer also? I am not, because I'm driving tonight. David just has to climb 14 flights of stairs. I'll push a button.
I pushed the button on the elevator.
Kristen Kaiser, nice to have you on. Just got the late notification you were live, Kristen. Nice to have you on each and every week. Barbara Hartka. Appreciate you there. Peter Griffin. Hi, Dan. Hi, Dave. Vicky Hitman. I think the derecho in 2012 surprised me with the intensity more than Sandy. And we always say that, too. Oh, yeah. If you live on the mainland, it was derecho in 2012. Yeah. If you live at the shore, it was...
Like, what are you talking about?
2012.
Yeah.
Right.
The shoreline didn't really experience anything too bad from the derecho. It was the mainland. Because I remember that Jake Lass and I had to drive down to Stone Harbor. And the radio station was knocked off the air and everything. We had to go to Stone Harbor to do a shoot at an art gallery, and I thought, Jake, it's going to take us forever. As soon as it took us like 2 hours to get to the island, but once we got on the island, nothing
at all. Yep. Let's see, Dan Devlin, September 21st, going on a cruise out of Miami. Prime of hurricane season, fingers crossed. It is.
Yeah.
That is.
I hope you had a good rate, though. You know,
and sometimes the cruise companies offer cheaper rates during hurricane season because it's harder to fill the boats.
Wait, you can't give the forecast for September 21st?
It will be hot and humid in Miami. That's the forecast. Will there be a hurricane on the map? Most likely. Could it be off Africa or way out in the Atlantic or over Miami? Who knows? But usually mid-September, Dan, I wish you well. I hope it's quiet. I hope you log on to the Weather Hurricane Center site. It says no tropical activity expected next 5 days. So Toby Keith was playing in the background, Dan. You are right. Actually, several songs from Toby Keith. My wife is watching from probably somewhere on the road in Pennsylvania, coming back from a girls' weekend in Ohio. She says
not
hi.
driving.
She was, to my knowledge. Hopefully she stopped.
Okay.
Or her sister's commenting for her. Tracy Ann, why does a
Kenzie's driving?
Kenzie could be driving or commenting.
Right. So hi, Kenzie.
Tracy Ann, why does a water spout form? Tornado over water is essentially what a water spout is. It can come ashore. If it comes ashore, it's a tornado. You don't want to be on the beach when a water spout comes ashore. Water spouts themselves just dangerous for mariners. Yeah. Has your boat ever been encountered one?
Yeah.
Really?
I've seen a couple fishing out of Florida.
Okay.
And what do you do in that situation?
You watch the radar on the boat very carefully to see which way the funnel cloud is going, and you go the other way.
Okay. That's all you really can do.
That worked for me the 2 times that I saw it. So.
Tamara Jones says, hey guys, look, just down the street from the Irish pub tomorrow. We welcome guests. You guys can stop on by, say hi, watch live. Tidal Flooding is filmed in front of a live studio audience, like all those 80s sitcoms were as well. Virginia Gordinsky, nice to have you on as well. Dan says it was cheap, so
there you go.
Cruise. So there you go. Dan Walters says, on my way. We always welcome first-time visitors or regular visitors. Not that we have the studio audience that like Cheers did, but we're working on it.
Everybody almost knows your name here.
The Irish pub is a very, very, it's a great place.
It is.
I love the atmosphere and the food and the drink. How is your beer?
It's an excellent beer.
Okay.
I have a hard time not buying anything at the gift shop every time I come here. very unique things in the
Yep.
gift shop.
I'll be talking with David Spatz, Longport Media, news, commentator, host, just man of jack of all, David of all trades.
There you go.
And again, Tidal Flooding Talk is brought to you. This is a guy who has had little sleep. Go figure, I had a baby for 5 months, and I'm pretty good. And baby goes away for 2 days, and I'm sleep deprived.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. Yep.
Tidal Flooding Talk is brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, sponsored by the Irish Pub, here every Sunday at 7 p.m. Next week, we have a first-time guest, Gary Zetkowski. Do you know that name?
The name is familiar. Why do I know that name?
He was the head of the National Weather Service during Sandy. He was the one that put out his cell phone number and his personal
That's right,
plea
I remember
saying, leave the shore. If you don't believe me, here's my cell phone number. Call me and I'll tell you why you're crazy to stay. I mean, and it was that type of product that actually got some people to leave. And
You got to scare them sometimes. You got to scare them, especially in New Jersey.
yeah, you do.
Really.
You'd be like our
Hard-headed.
governor, get the
Yes, we
off the
are.
beach.
Yeah.
Right. That could work too. So yeah, David Spatz is our guest this week. Next week we have Gary Zetkowski. Coming up September, great lineup of guests as well. We are off August 25th.
Fifth.
I will be up in the mountains of New Hampshire.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
And taking the last weekend before Labor Day off. Summer goes by fast.
Yes, it does.
Now, before we end the show, you are still on the air. How can people tune into your...
Monday through Friday from noon to 2 p.m. on News Talk 1400 WOND. You can listen online at WONDradio.com. There's also a way of listening on Alexa, and I don't remember what it is, so I'm going to tell you yet.
And off camera, we're saying it's a politics-free zone too. Most of the time,
well,
right?
my show is
Yes.
politics free. Yeah,
Right, which
we stay away
rare
from
these
that.
days, which is
So
nice.
if you want to
Yeah.
break
Professional.
from politics,
Oh, yeah.
tune in.
This show
That's
is
it.
politics free as well, unless we have a politician on. But even then, we stay kind of out of
Yeah, I
politics.
mean, I don't see you getting too crazy with like Chris Brown or something like that.
And we have Vince Mazzio, Assemblyman
There you
Mazzio,
go.
on in September. We had Assemblyman Amato. We have an open invitation to Senator Chris Brown, or we are bipartisan. We are unaffiliated here.
I can vouch for that.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure, pal.
And since you already got a shirt on the first time you were on
Right.
the show, now you
Oh.
have a pint glass,
Oh my goodness. There you
so
go.
you could have draft beer.
I'll have to bring it in.
And as we tell every guest, the pint glass is free, and then you just put it on the tab of our executive director, who will remain nameless, and it's unlimited drinks, as much as you can drink.
That's a plan. That's a good plan.
All right. We've been talking with David Spatz again. Tidal Flooding Talk, 7 p.m. every Sunday. We appreciate you joining in on a sensational weekend, and we hope next weekend is just as nice.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks for being here, guys.
See you.